and then we'll be able to bring in the folks who are going to be here with us, and we'll have a discussion as such. So until then, we'll just be killing a bit of time and working our way through things. Like a good chef, although I'm not a chef, I'm an educator, I've prepared a little something on the side. So this was the easiest way I could figure it out, but of course it comes up backwards as such. So yeah, not easy. Yeah. Hopefully there's not too much in the terms of sound that's happening. The gentleman next door's mowing his lawns and doing those sorts of things. We'll be underway in about a minute, and then we'll be able to work from there. So kia ora, and welcome to World Usability Day. I'm Lawrence Walker from Christchurch, New Zealand, and it's my privilege and pleasure to start and host this event. Good to see we've got 2 or 3 viewers, which is really helpful, and we've invited some folks. So hopefully we have some people, some other people come in as well. And we wanted to start with World Usability Day. This is something that's different for us here down in New Zealand. We do have quite a country of about 4.5 million people, and within that we have quite a bit of diversity in our makeup, and also the way that folks are spread out throughout the country. We have 4 main centres where most of the population preside, and then the remaining 20% of the population is spread out over other parts of the land. We'll have a look at a map shortly. I'm just trying to juggle a few things here in terms of emails, etc. Keeping an eye on things. Yeah, okay, so Cindy, how do I add you? Invite, I guess. Oh, here we are, yeah. Okay, so invite, set sig, invite. Okay. Right, so let's just, sorry, I'm just figuring out how to add people to the Hangout. So if I just do, okay. Need to send us an invite. Right, okay, thanks. Okay, so I just need to invite some folks to the Hangout. So all right, so let's just find some sorry about this. So yeah, just okay, so yeah, sorry, a wee bit distracted there. Just managed to work out some invites, and we'll sort of get those underway. Just Judith. Yeah. Okay, Judy. Oh, I can send the link live, right? Okay, thanks. Okay, so I can, of course, I can enter it in here, can't I? Okay, sorry about that. Now we're much better. Yeah. Okay, so hi, Betsy, can see you now. That's good. Are you able to turn on? Not hearing you. Okay. Right. So here's the links up on the right hand side in the group chat area to join the webinar. Right. Okay. That's my little bit annoying here. Okay. So Betsy, I can't hear you at all. Do I need to enable your microphone? Okay. Yep. Right. But I can't hear you as such. So uh, so Cindy. Right. Okay. Let me. So let's just. Right. Okay, there we are. I've just sent that link off to Cindy, and Cindy was going to send it around the committee. So hopefully that's working. Betsy, the mute microphone keeps popping up on your picture. Yeah, I'm still not hearing you. Do I need to do something? No. Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay. So, 10 minutes has already gone. So sorry about the technical difficulties. I'm a Adobe Connect user normally, and so it's I find it a lot easier to use Adobe Connect. However, we all have to adapt and work with different technologies as such. So today I'd just like to run through some of the things that we're doing in New Zealand. As I said earlier, New Zealand is a country of about 4.5 million people. And in that 4.5 million, we have quite a diverse population spread out. Let's just find I'll just do a wee screen share here just to show you what's what. So here we can talk about the types of things that our country is doing, and as you can see, this is a picture from the central South Island, high country, and it's actually taken from the Mount John Observatory in Lake Tekapo. But we have the mountain divide right up and down the South Island of our country, and it occurred to our educationalists and also the government and business that we needed a backbone of that was going to support usability, because a lot of pockets of things had happened and the universities had been linked with fiber, high-speed fiber connections for a number of years. But there are only 7 universities in New Zealand spread out across the country, so it wasn't really reaching everywhere. So when the ICT revolution came in, if you wanted to see it like that, obviously in order for people to be able to access things, it needed a strong fiber backbone. And we had a traditional copper wire network through the telephone system, and that wasn't going to be adequate for the types of things that were planned with the large connectivity as such. So the government headed down this line of the putting in some money, and we have an objective by 2020 that the country will have ultra-fast broadband fiber network up and down the country, both in the urban areas and also in the rural areas, because we have a reasonable number of farms as well. So that was the government's, or is the government's thrust. It's put a lot of money into that to make that work. And we're talking New Zealand dollars here, which I think is probably about 60 cents American at the moment. I think somewhere around there, maybe 70 cents. But it's the core ingredient, and it's been really interesting to see what a difference the ultra-fast broadband rollout has made to a lot of the services. And then we've got schools who are using this now for connectivity between schools, and they're able to now link up, video stream, do all of those things that they couldn't quite do because the bandwidth wasn't there with the old broadband. Now that's enabling people to shift in the way they think about accessibility for students. So no longer are students going to be one device per room, 30 students, and working that way. Now we can have multiple devices in rooms and support those both the high bandwidth things like video and those sorts of things. Great, good to see you, Cindy. I finally got the link there. So this shift then in the thinking has gone right through business. It's gone right into the homes. It's gone into the local governments, because New Zealand has one national government from the beginning, from the top of the country to the bottom of the country, and then we're broken up into regional councils as such. So this fibre aspect has been a huge shift in allowing people, regardless of disability, the opportunity to link up in more robust ways, and it's really taken off. We've had big shifts in things like the rollout of TV over the internet, as opposed to what we had before with the terrestrial sort of rollout. So those things are there. We've got a country that's both beautiful in terms of the natural resources that we have, and of course the city areas. That's a shot of Auckland across the sea or across the bay, and it's quite, yeah. So we've got, from quite dense cities, Auckland has about 1.2 million people living in it, which is large. It's the largest city in New Zealand, and then obviously out to the more rural and those sorts of aspects. However, everybody needs to be able to be connected, and here's a lovely one from Birds of the Feather in June. I'm actually sitting on that laptop there back in my office in New Zealand, and the lovely folks there at the ISTE Birds of a Feather session, and so I was able to join them. Now, that wouldn't have been possible without a good connectivity as such. And then, of course, our school kids down below are enabled now to be able to access beyond their classroom and do all of those things. And the children who have some barriers and difficulties accessing things, they can be accommodated by things that are working for them. We've seen a lot of uptake on the tablet technology and Chromebook in schools because they're relatively inexpensive, and consequently a lot of web-based disability accommodations now. So that's really quite interesting. So I'll just go to the next one. I think I can go to the next one. I thought I had a next slide. Yeah, it always confounds you, doesn't it, when you don't need to. So I'll just put that back in there. Okay, so we'll go on. We'll stop sharing that, and we'll come back to my face, which is, I don't think, as interesting as the thing there. Yeah. Okay. So that sort of gives you just a wee bit of a taste of the behind the scenes things that are happening that enable people to be more untethered, if you like. That will allow many people more and more seamless access through to the whole usability. But we have schools, we have a Ministry of Education that runs the entire education system in New Zealand, and they have areas that look after particularly assistive technology. Prior to, if we went back 10 years, we would have had a very pocketed system. It's now becoming a lot more unified because of the broadband rollout, the fibre rollout. So that backbone, that connectivity, is really the pathway, the roadway, the freeway, motorway, whatever you want to call it, that's allowing and accessing people. So yeah, it's really good to see. Now, just to open up some questions as to what might be interesting. So yeah, if anybody wants to ask questions or that, then yeah, please go ahead. Good to see Cindy and Betsy there as well.
And can you hear me now, Lawrence?
Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm Betsy Dalton. Hi, it's nice to talk with you and with Cindy and with everyone else who's on air and listening to us. I'm from Rhode Island in the USA, which is on the East Coast. And Lawrence, it was interesting to hear you talk about your broadband efforts. I know here in the US we've had a comprehensive broadband initiative, I would say at least for the past 6 or 7 years. There were large grants that were available to the various states for expanding broadband access. And with regard to usability, we had one of those grants here in Rhode Island, and I was involved with it because it's not just the physical accessibility, like getting the physical fibers and the bandwidth out there, but the piece that we were looking at was the digital literacy piece, and looking at once you get access, are you able to actually use it? And so here in Rhode Island, we had an effort where we worked with the adult education centers and the libraries and developed a digital literacy curriculum that was based on universal design for learning principles, and with the focus to reach out to individuals who were less likely to know how to access and use digital technologies. And it was really an exciting and great project. And we expanded the use of digital technology by at least 10% across the state, which when you move a percent of a state, that's pretty good. So we were happy to do that, and that project continues now. It was moved over to the adult education system here in Rhode Island. So I think a lot of these things, they need to become systemic. These efforts, when we started out with assistive technology, a lot of it was kind of, as you said, in pockets, either in the schools or in various centers. And now we're finding through, the ideas, the concepts of universal design and usability, these that accessibility and usability is becoming more ubiquitous, pretty much everywhere. And of course, the technology helps that as well. The technology that's built into the systems that we can purchase today, the accessibility features of iPads and other things, makes it so much more possible for everyone to have access and easy access to information through technology. So I just wanted to share those things that we're doing here on the other side of the world.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Betsy. UDL is just moving into New Zealand now in terms of schools understanding more about UDL. New Zealand has for a number of years had an inclusive education policy. So where possible, the inclusion in regular schools, mainstream schools, whatever you want to call them, is the government policy. We do have some special schools for some very small percentage of the population who require that type of environment. But by and large, most of our special needs, what we would call special needs children, for education side of things, are catered for in terms of the regular school system with some specialist support to enable those children to stay in the regular classroom. We've also had since the year 2000 the disabled person strategy, and that really was a hallmark change in terms of how we viewed people with disabilities. You're no longer allowed to discriminate against people on basis of ethnicity, disability, or religious belief in New Zealand. It's now actually illegal to do those things. So that policy and the big picture umbrella material or background there is also enabling and helping people become more involved in the whole idea of the world is for everybody, the community is for everybody, and everybody needs to be able to work through and access it as well. So really taking a lot of lead from the states, particularly around UDL, and it is now moving through really well through our school system. And certainly in the last 5 years, the backbone infrastructure has enabled a lot. Now, it's still back down to the individual site where, in terms of people coming and going and attitudes and those sorts of things. But you're dead right. It's enabling, and that's the amazing thing. In terms of assistive technology in New Zealand, we've seen a shift now to more web-based tools that can enable and help people, and even in the universities, they're getting on board finally. Always higher institutions either seem to be right out the front or lagging behind. There seem to be a lot of middle ground. Just my opinion, of course. I can't be talking for my own institution. Cindy, did you have something you'd wish to share?
Oh, I was just going to say that in my home state of Iowa, we had broadband early. In fact, so early that even myself we were all making fun of the governor who paid for it, including myself, because little did I know what was going on. And so he spent the funds to attach all the schools for with thoughts of like foreign language in some of the small rural schools who couldn't afford foreign language teachers, or some of the more advanced science classes, some of the more advanced math classes, and piping those out. What he found, what the state of Iowa found, was that it was so popular because the National Guard started using it, the hospitals started using it, so you could pipe um, pictures and x-rays and imaging to the large university hospitals and get diagnoses from specialists without sending your people there, that it quickly got swamped, and they had to add more and more to it because it proved to be far and away a visionary thing on the part of that governor, even though we kind of called it at the time Governor Branstad's folly. But it turned out he was right, and it became a real benefit to my home state.
Yeah, I think that's the case. It's the same with us. The government said first up that it was going to roll out in 2 years ultra-fast broadband through the fibre network to all schools in New Zealand. We've got 2,500 state-funded schools in New Zealand. And it just took off from there, and then communities were saying, well, hey, hang on, we want it, and so hence now $2 billion has been earmarked in our budget through to 2020 to actually enable that. So there's just been this huge exponential growth in uptake, and businesses now are using webinars and video conference calls far more than they used to enable it. And I think that's it's sort of gone viral almost. The different permutations of using just this, basic sort of what we would have thought a fairly fundamental thing. But the advantage for people with disabilities is that it's allowed them access to things. The web is a great leveler, in my opinion. Nobody knows that it took me 3 hours to type a 5-line sentence if I'm doing it asynchronously. There's a great leveler in that. However, once we get the interactivity part, then there's a different aspect of that. But it does allow people access, and it's how we use it that's the important thing, and the fact that we can use it regardless of how we may access it, which is a really helpful aspect. But UDL is a really empowering way of looking at things. We're now embracing the digital citizenship material out of the States, particularly in the Southern Hemisphere and Australia and New Zealand. We've had quite a bit of media coverage on cyberbullying, and particularly people around who have identifiable special needs, perhaps through physical or way they cognitively behave, that they can be easily bullied in the cyber world, and so there's lots of work going on behind the scenes to stop that. And of course the positives about being what does a good digital citizen in the global world mean, those aspects.
So how's the field of wearable technology in New Zealand?
Funny you should ask that. Yes, we're working on some ideas. In Christchurch, where I live, where the University of Canterbury is, we have a particular expertise in software development, and a lot of our developers are developing for the worldwide market, and wearable is part of that. I think it will be just like the shift from the Star Trek days. I'm old enough to remember Star Trek. I know that Betsy and Cindy aren't, but you know, it was a TV series. Anyway, you know, the communicator. Now, who would have thought that that would have become a cell phone in your hand, and that morphed into that. You know, it's common to see people looking at their phone. Actually, it's really weird because you see 2 or 3 people standing next to each other and they're looking at the phone. They're not actually talking and interacting with each other. They may very well be texting or short messaging each other. I don't know. But yeah, that sort of shift of things that way. My grandson, just over a year old, you hand him the phone and just pick of course it's an Apple one, you hand and you flick at the you know, the camera, so he sees himself and he can recognize himself, and he starts to touch himself and on the screen and do those sorts of things. His screen time's fairly limited for him though. But all of those things, you know, who would have imagined that those things would have been enabling? So it's not hard now to imagine that wearables will become like that. We're particularly interested in some of the things that I'm looking at the functionality that the Apple Watch and those sorts of devices give us in terms of research and data collection. But wearable, yeah, is certainly on its way.
I had the opportunity to write an article last fall on wearable technology, and then we did a panel, Betsy and I and several other people at ISTE last year. And when my co-authors in the article were not special ed technology people, and it was the most interesting research I've done because it was all new stuff. So I wasn't looking in traditional university research. I was looking in the stuff that's hot off the presses from anybody and everybody. And I was hard put not to make, I really had work not to make the article completely people with disabilities, because wearables is so strong in the field of disabilities, from the researchers who are testing magnetic studs within a person's tongue that control the wheelchair, to something that you can put on your forehead that will make you happier during the day. It's just amazing the things that, and a single-handed typewriter. I have one that's called a Twiddler 3, and it, with the advantage of using what they call cording, where you type 2 buttons at one time, you can type into your iPad or your computer through a Bluetooth connection with a single hand. And it's just amazing what is going on in the field of wearable technology. IBM put forth a video on YouTube where a young man is out in the park with his father, and his teacher comes through and suggests that he needs to look at certain kinds of butterflies and research that. And he's talking to her and looking at her through his shirt. It's electrical clothing, and that technology is possible today, so that your classroom can become a ubiquitous kind of a thing. And I'm sure that the broadband that's going on in New Zealand is going to be very helpful for that kind of technology as it advances.
Mm-hmm. So I'd like to be a devil's advocate here, bringing in the idea of, yes, there are all of these possibilities, but does that mean we have to know about all these possibilities, or, you know, how are things going to be kind of shaken out to be the ones that fall through the screen that actually get used? Because, you know, sometimes all this stuff out there, and I just am so overwhelmed with all of the possibilities. Do I need personally to know about all these in order to be effective or proficient, in using technology, or can I just settle in on certain things? And I'll give you, an example. One of them being in like social media. Yes, there might be 1,000 different types of social media, but do I personally need to know about all of them? I don't think so. What I need to do is to settle in on the ones that work most effectively for me. And I think that that's probably what's going to happen with wearable technology. It's what happens with a lot of technology. Many things get developed, but only some of them actually work through to practical use and more common use. So I'd be interested in what others think about that.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, there's lots of inventiveness that goes on, and we have some of our computer science people that invent things, and then we go around and look for a use for it. So that's making it sort of just different. Here's something you've invented. Now let's go find a use for it. And I think that sort of sorts itself out. I hate to use this word, but the market will decide. If you look at a lot of things that have come in, Palm Pilot, PDAs, all of those sorts of things, and now they've morphed into a mobile phone that has that functionality and universality to it. So originally, cell phones were getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and now we see the trend of making the screens bigger, maybe for the likes of us who are challenged visually. So all of those things, I think it's a developing thing. It's a developing field. However, you also need to be able to communicate and talk with each other, because those are the important things, and that's how we sort of work things together. That the engineers need to talk to the other people, the developers, the educationalists, and it becomes a multidisciplinary team that needs to be working together on all of those things. So that's the type of thing that we need in terms of how we're going to get things moving along and going places. Yeah.
I think, am I unmuted?
Yep.
I think that Lawrence is correct. I think the market's going to make the decision to some extent, but not entirely. But I mean, it did that for Google Glass. Google Glass didn't take off in the education field, but it has taken off in the medical field. So in a way, I think the market will do it. There's something else that is involved when you come to wearable technology, and that's the privacy issue. If you're, for example, a PE teacher who's using Fitbits with your students, we don't know where the data for the Fitbit goes to. And so you run into the issue of privacy, and does it violate the law if you as a PE teacher are requiring Fitbit technology for your students. And I do know that there have been case studies. There was a school district in Texas that had like GPS kind of things that were on there, they had their students wear, and they were trying to keep track of their students. But one of the families in the district sued the district because in the Bible there's something about you shall not be I'm not going to get this right. It's been a while since I looked at this research, but the Bible could not sort of pinpoint an individual, and the parents assumed that by having their child GPS followed, it was violating their religion. And so those kinds of things are going to make a difference in the field of wearables too. But at the same time, it's like, so when I got was writing this article and I knew I was going to be presenting the panel at ISTE, I simply said to my husband, Kevin, I've got to have something that's wearable. I can't be, I have to have something. And so Santa brought me a Pebble watch. Now that's the low end of the watches. But what I found out was that it was far more useful than I thought it would be. When I teach online, my students who can't connect will send me an email and it comes across my watch and I know what's going on. And I only had it 2 weeks and my husband realized how useful it would be for him as a school superintendent. And so now his Pebble watch is tied into the text messages for his school board. So he knows instantly if he's got a real crisis on his hands that he needs to follow up on because it comes across his watch as a text message. So I think it's a case of exactly what you both said. You have to find what you're comfortable with, and I don't think you need to know everything, Betsy. I think you need to be open. I mean, that's the way I always teach my students in tech classes is you don't have to know everything. You just have to be open. If your students start bringing something in, to have them show you how to use it and figure out a use for it if there truly is a use for it. Some stuff, like Google Glass, doesn't fit. And so the usefulness, they just couldn't sell enough to the schools to make them a viable thing. Now, I think they're going to come back, but I think they're going to come back in a different form because there's a lot of kinds of things going on right now in wearable technology, like the Oculus Rift. Microsoft has something where you can watch 3D movies by putting the thing across your face. And so I suspect Google Glass will come back new and different at some point in time, but it didn't find a market in public schools.
There was a project back in 2002 in Boulder, Colorado, as I understand, and it was the Clever Lever, I think that was the name, or Cognitive Lever project, and it was built around helping people with disabilities become more independent. And the illustrated example was a young, about a 26-year-old person, and with a cognitive disability, and her mum was pretty concerned that she was going to be as independent as she could possibly be. So using a Palm Pilot in those days, she had visuals that showed her what she needed to have with her when she left the house. If she went to the local rec centre, the bus system, the GPS bus system, identified the bus that she needed to catch when it came past, and then fed her that information via the Palm Pilot. When she got to the rec centre, it showed her that she needed to pay her $5 to get in, and those bits and pieces. But the other side of it was this tracking thing where mum could actually track on the web real time where her daughter was, just to make sure, peace of mind for a parent that her daughter had arrived at the designated destination. Now we see the tile and those sorts of things, which I'm sure are getting sewn into kids' clothes and the like, so that we know where our kids are. And in some ways that tracking has got its good uses, but then there are those that say, well, hey, look, this is an invasion of privacy and our personal rights, etc. And I think we're always going to have those two ends of the continuum, and then somewhere in the middle is where it's functional for everybody. The research kit via Apple. The Apple Research Kit, we had a couple of folks from Australia talking to us the other day about that, and there's lots of choices on that as to whether you can collect your data in the healthcare app or the various healthcare apps, but you choose whether you send it on or not, and it has that ability to send anonymous data, so that while it can be very helpful, it doesn't necessarily need to be tied to the individual. So I think those are the debates that we're going to have. I mean, I think we've always had that debates back about can someone with a cognitive disability actually give informed consent to be part of a research project. I know our ethics panels at our university have struggled with that over time. The ability that video gives in terms of videoing situations, you know, what's required there, you know, what right do you have not to have your video taken? And if you're walking in a public street in New Zealand, you've got no right. You know, CCTV footage is there, and that's used. And if you're in the public highway or the public streets, then or public places, then you've got no rights about what your image, what can be taken as such. So those are the debates that we're going to have, and I think wearables, Cindy, very rightly so, are going to pose a new set of problems as well. However, there's that huge advantage of being able to collect relatively anonymous data and actually monitor things. We're looking at a project at the moment where we would like to continuously monitor the arousal levels in children in the classroom. And while we can do it through observation, that's obviously an expensive and difficult task to do. But if we can have a wearable, then we can actually collect data pretty much, you know, sampling every 5 seconds, etc., to see where heart rate is, and you know, those sorts of aspects that might be indicators of arousal levels. So it can help us in many ways, but the ethical side is always going to be a debate, and individual rights, and as opposed to the group rights, are always going to be aspects there.
How about the maker movement in New Zealand? Are you seeing a lot of 3D printing kinds of things?
Yeah, it's just taken off in the last year. This 2015 would be Maker Year, no pun intended. So yes, we've certainly seen the rollout of the 3D printers into like the warehouse stationery chain and other you know, big chain stores that go throughout New Zealand. And the prices drop around to about $1,500 New Zealand, or you can spend more money than that. And as the price starts to drop, then we'll see more uptake on it. Schools are now getting into 3D printing as such, and the maker movement is beginning to take hold here. In New Zealand, we've had traditionally we've had what we've called a number 8 fencing wire approach to things. In other words, good problem-solving skills, because we've had to originally when New Zealand was settled from Europe and the UK and other places across the planet, you were a boat ride away, which was, you know, maybe 5-6 months on a ship, so there wasn't easy help. So you had to become self-reliant, and so the Kiwi attitude has been this one of self-reliance. And we also had some technical training, home economics, cooking and sewing, and it used to be a gender split. For boys, it was metalwork and woodwork, and those skills were taught at around 10 to 12 year age level, and sometimes continued through our high schooling, which started about age 13. Now, we've seen the demise of that with the build-up of things like technology, and we've focused more on process than actually doing. And now it's nice to see the maker aspects come back in with the ICT, and the making aspects, even though they're somewhat more sophisticated, with the CNC laser cutters and 3D printers and stuff like that. So it's actually a shift back, and we've got a lot of interest at the moment in design thinking nationally. We've got people going up and down the country pushing the design thinking aspects, and they're trying to permeate that through all aspects and all levels of business and government and education as such. So yeah, it's certainly a big uptake, and it's exciting, as in anything. And particularly my one of my interest areas is augmented reality, and we're seeing some work done there as well. You might recall back in 2012 we presented the pop-up physics book at the SITE conference, and that was really good. Yeah.
You might recall back in 2012 presented
yeah. It's really quite an interesting thing. Judy, we're probably getting some feedback, so I might just mute your microphone. That's good. Right, cool. Okay, so welcome, Judy. Good to see you.
Hi,
and finally, yeah, made it. So we've been nattering away. It's a good Kiwi term. Talking away and talking about we got onto wearables because Cindy made us wear it.
Listening for a bit, but I wasn't to be seen, so I actually have been following some of this conversation. So I think I'll be more of a lurker while you're talking, having just come in late. But I'll
I'm not sure. Hi, Judy. It's so great that you could finally connect. Judy and I are dear friends from back in 2010 when we first met in Kuwait when we were presenting together. But Judy, I'd like you to jump in here and just tell us, a little bit about yourself and what you do there in South Africa, and maybe talk a little bit about your perspective about inclusion and usability, because we are recording this, so we're live, and we would like to have the perspective from South Africa represented. So why don't we turn it over to you just for a little bit.
Okay, so I live in Cape Town. I work at the University of Cape Town in the Disability Studies program, and I'm very interested in the uses of technology. I do it in a fairly random fashion, use what I can, and I think the two areas that I've been really looking at technology quite a lot is in terms of teaching, in terms of being able to reach more students around disability studies at a distance while still providing quality. So I've been very interested in the impact of blended learning there. And then also I'm interested in terms of, I have a son with Down syndrome, and it's interesting how things work out. I mean, we thought this iPad is going to be a very educational device and it's going to work well for him. But what's interesting is how he's turned it into his own uses. And what he does is he uses it as an entertainment device to listen to music and to look at photographs. And he does that like anybody would read books or something like that. He listens to music and looks at his old photographs. So that's just some of the areas, some of the things that have come up for me. I think that the potential is absolutely enormous. I don't think we've even begun to think of how we can actually use these various technological devices in a multitude of ways. But I think what is interesting for me is about that interface between the technology and the person. That it's not, there's nothing automatic about it. To have the technology doesn't mean that it's usable. It doesn't mean that it it's going to work. It's that interface in between. So I'm not sure if I'm on the right track here, Betsy. I'm just sharing some of the thoughts that I have around this technology in general. And
There's no, yeah, great.
usability is I'm not really all that familiar with the term, so you've got more on that. I find that interesting as well.
Yeah. There isn't any one right track, Judy,
Okay.
and I think that your perspective in terms of Joel's experience, actual experience in terms of what he uses the iPad for, I think we all need to learn from that. And one of the things that I wanted to bring into this conversation, Judy, was the experience I had when I was there, when we were doing the Universal Design for Learning training at the University of Cape Town several years ago, and the kind of light bulb that went off with me when we were talking about universal design for learning and technology and bringing UDL and technology into one's practice. And the comment that was made by the teacher who was from outside of Cape Town, was from one of the outer districts, saying, well, this is all wonderful and really wanting to embrace this, but their school didn't have electricity. And at that one point, I said, well, yeah, okay, now does universal design for learning, are there ways that we can bring universal design for learning into schools that don't have electricity? Absolutely, but then we have to be thinking about it in different ways. But then the other issue is, so how do we bring electricity? How does electricity come to rural schools in Africa and around the world so that they can benefit from these tools that have become available? And then, it also brings in the whole conversation of mobile technologies. Well, mobile technologies are actually working off of battery technologies. So does that open up accessibility to schools and to places that actually don't have plug-in electricity but could have other sources of electricity? So I'd be interested in maybe some of your thinking on it, Judy and Lawrence and Cindy, around some of these issues.
Well, I think the around the technology thing, the use of cell phones is absolutely huge in rural areas and in areas where there might not be a lot of other technology. I mean, for example, in Kenya, they've got this incredibly sophisticated payment system called M-Pesa, where you can do all your payments by cell phone. So although the cell phones might not even be that sophisticated, the system really works well. So and they call there are organizations in South Africa, an NGO I know of, that works with what are called feature phones, that are the non-smartphones, and looking at applications for feature phones as well, because they're much more widespread than smartphones. So I think that's a big thing, is looking at that. And then, of course, the other thing is, even if you do have the technology, and this is what we find with our students, because like a lot of our students come from, we've got students in Namibia, Botswana, Malawi, and Zambia, and sometimes there's bandwidth is more of a problem. So there's electricity, but it's bandwidth and the cost of bandwidth. So I think what we're looking at there is, and I don't know too much about the technology about it, but you can download. We have all our courses up on a particular learning platform, and you can download that learning platform onto your drive, which you can then use when you're out of bandwidth, but then when you connect up to bandwidth, it updates. I think it's something like that. Mm-hmm. So that's another thing that we're trying to look at. But I think that it's a process is going to happen. It's going to just move more slowly than elsewhere. But I think that there's no ways that Africa's just being completely left out. I think there are creative ways that are happening to use of technology. Yeah.
I think you're right that it is happening, and you know, it's happening faster in some places than others, but you know, so as we are developing, you know, our online, you know, learning opportunities and things like that, you know, I think we need to keep in mind that, you know, access to those may not be automatic. So, you know, in looking at, you know, asking the question, how will people be able to access them, is another part of the picture.
Yes, there was a very good ad campaign by Compaq back in the about year 2000 that said, "New technology abounds, new thinking is rare," and you know, with technology implementation, often it's the we're doing the old things with the new technology, and actually just the new ways that we can do things aren't quite there yet. So yeah, it's a really interesting way of looking at things, and I think we mentioned earlier about a continuum, that it's not, you can't just stop and say, this is it, I'm here, that's what I've done. It's a changing world as we speak, as things move on, and it's about attitude. And certainly when you run up against fundamental problems like power and access, you know, through the broadband and those sorts of things, those are stumbling blocks along the way. And what we've learned in New Zealand is that we need to actually address a lot of different things in order to make things happen, because schools put a lot of money individually into networking their schools, and some of them did some pretty shoddy jobs, and some contractors did some pretty shoddy jobs, and so it didn't last. So it was basically money down the drain, you know, just flushed away. So now our ministry have taken a lot more control and a lot more guidance in making sure that we've got some standards that require robust infrastructures. We've had those sorts of things in our building industry for years, but now it's been applied through the IT networks as well. So all of that sort of thing is an interesting thing, and it's not just one sector that's driving it. It's across the board of business, of education, government level, that and community level, that's all driving that those aspects. And I think that's the exciting bit, that it's about everybody you know, mucking in and doing it together, and learning from each other and listening to each other. And I think that's the exciting bit. And technology's there to enable. You know, just listening to Judith speak there, we had quite a bit of difficulty for a bank to give FPOS cards, point of sale cards, to some participants one of my students had with who had Down syndrome, and she was teaching them how to successfully make FPOS transactions using video self-model. By the way, the project was incredibly successful, and a very short uptake in the learning, very effective. There'll be an article coming out shortly about that one. But the that idea that the bank just really couldn't get over this, you can't tell anyone your PIN number, and that was a real stumbling block for the bank, and you know, that was the difficulty that we had. So we had to set up some protocols and that around the parents knowing, or the caregivers knowing, what the young person's PIN number was, so in case they forgot it, then they could do it, because obviously writing it down was not a wise thing to do. So it's the thinking things are often the stumbling blocks. The technology's there, and I think we're evolving in how we will use these things. So we've had a very interesting discussion. We've gone 5 minutes over time, but it's been really good. Thank you very much, Cindy and Betsy and Judith for joining in, and whoever else has been lurking and listening. That's been really helpful. Hopefully we've sparked some ideas and some thoughts, and following it through on the ISTE blog would be really quite useful. So thank you very much. I'll be stopping the broadcast, and people want to just sign off, and we'll.
And thank you, Lawrence, for hosting.
Let me just say one thing. A reminder that there's another one of these at 7 o'clock this evening, Central Standard Time. So if you'd like to join us at 7 o'clock, I'm going to bring my class online, my undergraduate and graduate students. So we'll be back on for the final installation or the final session for World Usability Day for the Inclusive Learning Network at 7 Central Time.
Great, thank you, Cindy. I'll be singing at the choir.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.